You've decided to get rid of your Honda Goldwing. Maybe you're going to get a brand new Goldwing, or maybe you're going to get some other motorcycle altogether, or maybe you're just getting away from motorcycling. Regardless, you want to get the most for your Honda Goldwing that you possibly can.
This video is sponsored by Cruiseman's Garage Honda Goldwing Maintenance Video Series.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cruiseman's Garage. Today I'm going to talk about how you can get the most for your existing Honda Goldwing. Now I'm under the assumption that you're planning to trade up, or you're going to upgrade to a newer Goldwing or to a different motorcycle altogether, and that you're trying to decide, do you want to trade it in on a new bike, or do you want to sell it outright to an individual? The object of this video is to give you some tips and ideas on how to get the most for your Honda Goldwing. So I'm going to focus primarily on selling your Honda Goldwing. You could, of course, trade it in, and there are some advantages to trading in. It's easier to trade in your bike than it is to sell it outright to someone else, but you're not going to get as much money on a trade as you are if you sell it. If you sell the bike, you basically get to keep that dealer markup, because the dealer is going to take your bike. Let's just say the dealer offers you $10,000 for your used bike. Well, they're going to turn right around and put that on their showroom if it's a bike they sell. As an example, we'll take a Honda Goldwing. If you're trading it in at a Honda dealer, they're going to sell that Goldwing. If you're trading it in at a Harley dealer, they're probably going to wholesale that bike out to a Honda dealer or to some other dealership because maybe they just don't sell Goldwings. Nevertheless, that markup, they're going to sell that bike for, let's say, $13,000 or $14,000. Well, that's markup that somebody's going to come into that dealership and pay for that motorcycle. Now, if you sell the bike outright, you have the opportunity to make that markup rather than the dealership. The only other advantage I can think of to trading as opposed to selling outright is you do save sales tax. If you purchase a $20,000 motorcycle, now I'm talking about in the state of Texas, I think most states probably work this way, but where we live, you only pay tax on the new motorcycle, the difference between that and your trade-in. So if you have a $10,000 trade-in, you buy a $20,000 motorcycle, that leaves you a net taxable amount of $10,000. So you're only paying tax on $10,000. The main takeaway is you always make more selling the bike yourself than you will by trading in, if you do it correctly. So let's say you've decided you're going to sell the motorcycle yourself. How do you list the motorcycle for sale? There's a few different options. In the old days, you'd put an ad in the classifieds of the newspaper, but nobody reads the newspaper anymore. So what do you do now? I've sold 3 Honda Goldwings. I've sold a Kawasaki Versus, and I've sold a Harley Davidson Sportster. Now, I've used 2 different methods. I've used eBay Motors, where I listed the used bike for sale on eBay. Of course, this does cost a little money for the listing, and if you sell it. I've also used CycleTrader.com. I think the last 2 bikes I sold on CycleTrader. I think it's probably a much better, cost-wise, better format than eBay Motors is now. You could also use Facebook Marketplace, but I'm not that familiar with Facebook Marketplace, and I've heard some stories that sometimes you end up with some less than qualified people looking at your ads on Facebook than you would on CycleTrader.com. I've also sold cars on AutoTrader, which is their sister company. So I've sold 2 cars on AutoTrader.com and 3 or 4 motorcycles on CycleTrader. I want to interject here that I don't really recommend Craigslist. You get some really undesirable people coming to your house on Craigslist, and it's just not my first choice. Now, it's important when you put your listing out as far as the price you put on the motorcycle. Do some research before you put out a price. And you want to look at something like Cycle Trader. Look for other motorcycles in the same year as your motorcycle, maybe with the same comparable number of miles, and see what they're listed at. If you're way too high, it could hurt your chances. I would, however, rather be higher than lower, because lower might indicate to a potential buyer there's something wrong with the motorcycle. So I would try to stay in that range of from low to high, somewhere in the middle, or maybe toward the higher end when I'm pricing. So before you even list the bike, you need to make sure it's prepped and ready to be shown to a potential buyer. So let's talk about prepping the motorcycle. First, it's a good idea to assume that you're going to be dealing with a sophisticated buyer. Don't assume that somebody's going to walk in there and not know their facts, not know anything. Just go ahead and assume that they've watched my video on tips on buying a used Honda Goldwing. Just assume they've watched that video, and that's going to tell you a lot of what you need to do to get the bike prepared and ready to sell. So if you assume up front that you're going to have a sophisticated buyer, then you want to make sure you do a few things. The first thing is, obviously, you want to make sure that you have fresh oil and a brand new filter in the bike. Go ahead and get that changed or change it yourself. Make sure you've got fresh oil and filter, because a sophisticated buyer is going to pull that dipstick and check the oil to see if the oil is clean and if it's been changed. And that's just one of the things I would always recommend that you do. Another obvious thing I shouldn't have to mention, but I will, go ahead and wash the bike and give it a good, thorough wash. Maybe even spend some time polishing or waxing, checking for any little nicks or dings that might need a little touch-up or repair. Make sure you polish the chrome. You want to get the bike as clean as possible, because when somebody's looking to buy a used motorcycle, there's nothing more important than the visual. The first thing they see is the bike itself. If the bike is dirty or it has visible signs of dust or wear or little tiny scratches, it can really hurt your ability to sell the motorcycle. There are a lot of things you might be able to do to spend a little money on if you need to. Maybe it's replacing a small part that's faded or scratched. You could probably spend a couple of $100s on your used Goldwing. That could end up making you an extra $1,000. I would take the most obvious thing and replace it. For example, on a Honda Goldwing, if your windshield is extremely scratched and damaged and has a lot of rock chips in it, you might consider putting a different windshield on. You can buy aftermarket windshields for a couple of $100s, and that's going to go a long way to getting you more money for that motorcycle. Let's say maybe you've got a cracked taillight lens or a turn signal lens. Go ahead and replace it. They're not that expensive, and it could make a big difference. Also, if you've added any accessories to your motorcycle, which most of us have, and let's say you've added some light somewhere and the light's not working, make sure you've either repaired it so that it is working before somebody comes to look at the bike, or better yet, if you have to, just remove it altogether. It's better to not have something on the motorcycle than it is to have something on there with a bulb that's burned out or something that just doesn't look right. So let's talk about the documentation you should have before a buyer comes to look at the bike. Number one, you should have really good maintenance records. You should be able to show receipts if you've taken the motorcycle to dealerships for maintenance or any repairs. Make sure you have all of that in a folder. if you've done the maintenance yourself. If you use our videos, we give you a spreadsheet that you can use to track all of the maintenance so that you can then print that out and give it to a potential buyer. Or you can just do it yourself. I mean, you can simply keep a log of every time the oil was changed, at what miles and on what date, and what type of oil and filter you used. If you have receipts from your dealership, it will probably show that information. It's the number one thing I would look for when buying a used motorcycle is I want to know how well the motorcycle has been maintained. So it's very important to keep those records. It's very important that you have those records and offer those to the potential buyer right up front. Don't wait for the potential buyer to have to ask you for that. You can just display that to them when they're looking at the bike and say, I've got a list of every maintenance been done on the bike. The bike's been very well taken care of. That is a huge plus for a potential buyer. One of the biggest advantages of selling a Goldwing, or I should say one of the biggest advantages of someone buying your used Goldwing from you as opposed to buying your Goldwing from a dealer if you were to trade it in, they get a chance to meet you. They get a chance to know what kind of person was riding the bike, what kind of person owned the bike, and what kind of person was passionately taking care of the bike. So use that to your advantage when you're trying to sell your used motorcycle. Now, this video, I am kind of using the Honda Goldwing as an example, but this applies to any motorcycle you're trying to sell. You'll be able to use these tips to help you sell any motorcycle on the market. You want to make sure you have the title in your name to present to the potential buyer. Now, you may have a lien against the title, assuming if you have a loan on the motorcycle, that's okay. You can make it clear to the buyer that once this transaction is done, you're going to pay off and they'll get the new fresh title in their name. I like to have a bill of sale printed out and ready to go with all the information. Now, I might leave the amounts open. I can handwrite that in, and then we can sign the bill of sale. The buyer and myself can sign it. I will give you in the description of this video, there will be a link to a PDF, which is a bill of sale that I've used when selling my motorcycles. Feel free to use that. You can also find some of these on the internet, but they've always worked fine for me. I like to have a bill of sale ready to go in that folder of documentation with the maintenance records, with the title. I have everything in a folder ready to do business. I want, when that potential buyer comes to my house to take a look at the motorcycle, I want to be able to close the deal. I don't want to have to say, oh, you have to give me a day or two to get this together, or I need to run over here to pick this up. Have it all ready to go before you ever make the listing, before you ever take a call from a potential buyer and set up an appointment. Another important piece of documentation is you need to have a complete, thorough list of every accessory, every add-on on that motorcycle. I want to know, if I'm a potential buyer, I want to know what lights have been added, what chrome parts have been added, if you've added a different seat, if you have an aftermarket windshield. I want to know every single accessory, and I also want you to show that buyer how much you paid for those accessories, including the cost of installation. Now, that one document is going to be valuable when it comes time to negotiate for the price on this motorcycle. I tell people buying a motorcycle, accessories don't hold their value, but value is sort of up to the buyer. So if these are things that you have on your motorcycle that they probably would add to their motorcycle, it does have value, and you want to make sure you have all of that documented and listed. Very organized fashion, show when it was installed, where it was installed. If you trade that motorcycle in, the dealer probably isn't going to give you anything for those accessories. But if you, because they're going by a blue book, Okay, they're just looking at a blue book value for that motorcycle. But if you're selling to a potential buyer, those things might have some real value. Okay, so you've got your documentation, you've made your listing. So now if somebody has contacted you, they want to come over, they want to take a look at the bike, they want to look at it in person. Very common, almost everybody's going to want to do that. First and most important rule that I've always had, I've never made an exception, is I do not allow a test ride. I just don't do it. I've heard too many horror stories of people that have tried to take test rides on motorcycles. They end up getting in an accident. Not only do they damage the motorcycle, but they may get injured. There could be liability issues. I always tell people, if they ask me, can I take it for a ride? I always say, in fact, I put it in the listing right up front. No test rides. You take it the way we'll start the bike, we'll run it, we'll rev it up, but I don't do test rides. So that's just my rule, okay? If you want to take the risk and the liability of letting somebody get on your bike that you don't know and take it down the street or down for a couple of miles, you may never see the bike again. Depends on where you live and who you're dealing with. I wouldn't do it. I just don't feel comfortable doing it, and it's never been necessary. Like I said, I've sold several motorcycles, and I've never, ever let anybody do a test ride. A lot of dealerships don't let people do test rides, so it's not that uncommon. I would start the bike. Oh, you want to make sure they can hear it run. And also, that brings up another point. Make sure you've got a good, fresh battery in the motorcycle so that it doesn't sit there and die or can't start. You want to make sure the battery's charged and in good shape. So you want to start the bike, let it run, rev it up, let it come up to temperature so they can kind of check it and see it and hear the engine. Now, on the newer Goldwings, the 2018, some Goldwings, when the engine's cold, you'll get a little clicking on the right side of the engine. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. I'm specifically talking about a Honda Goldwing now. That doesn't indicate a problem. Some people think it's a valve issue or something, and it's not. Usually, it just means the bike needs to be warmed up. So what you might do, you might consider, if you have an appointment at 3 o'clock for this person to come over and take a look at the bike, start the bike and let it come up to full temperature before they show up. That way the bike's already warm. You're less likely to get that clicking sound. It's usually on a cold engine, and it's not an indication of any issue. But somebody that's not familiar with the 6th generation Goldwing, they may not know that. You want to make sure you go around with the buyer and show them that all the lights are working, all the switch gears working, honk the horn. Of course, you've already started the bike, so they've seen that the starter works. Make sure you might even try putting up the kickstand, sitting on the bike. If it's a DCT model Goldwing, you might want to put it in gear just to show that it goes into gear. If it's a manual transmission, you could pull in the clutch and put it into first gear and then shift up into second gear, just sitting right there in the driveway, and put it back into neutral, just to show them that the transmission is shifting and working. I'm assuming they're planning on, if they buy it, I'm assuming they plan on riding the bike home. If it's a touring bike like a Goldwing, you want to make sure you open the trunk, make sure you've cleaned out the trunk. You don't want a bunch of junk in there. You want to make sure it's clean, just as part of the washing process. Make sure you don't have any tools laying in there. Same with the saddlebags. You want everything to be empty, clean, just like they were looking at the bike on the showroom floor of a Honda dealer. So every compartment, open, close, show all of those details. Make sure you show them the brakes. They pull in the brakes, the brake light works. All of the lights are working. All of the accessories are working. Now, I would also show them the tires. If I'm selling a used motorcycle and if the tires are at the end of their life, like 8 or 9, 10,000 miles, and you can visibly see the tread is worn and the tires are going to need to be replaced really soon, You may not want to go ahead and install a new set of tires just so that you can sell the bike, but you can use this in your negotiation and say, listen, I realize these tires have about 8,000 miles. You're probably going to need to replace these in the next couple of thousand miles. And so I'm going to knock $150 off the bike just to go toward your cost of having to replace those tires. And that shows that you're kind of getting out ahead of the issue before they even think maybe to bring it up. So now it's time to negotiate. You've got a potential buyer that's interested in your motorcycle, and the negotiation begins. Of course, the negotiating begins, when you place the listing. You've already started the negotiation. So the negotiation began long before they ever got there and took a look at your bike. I only, personally, for me, this is what I'm comfortable with. I only accept cash or PayPal or Novo if you have something like that. I do not accept a check. I don't even like a cashier's check or a certified check. I want cash, money. That's just me. You can do it however you're comfortable with. Maybe you are comfortable with a bank draft. That's fine. If it could be done, but I'm not signing that title over to anybody until I know I have received full payment. And when you're negotiating, you want to make sure that you point out the most positive things about the motorcycle. Maybe you've kept it in a garage. That's important. Believe it or not necessarily so much with a Goldwing, but with a lot of motorcycles, people leave them outside. Maybe they live in an apartment. They left it outdoors. That to me is a negative for buying a bike. So if you have kept your motorcycle in a garage, make sure to mention that. This bike's never spent, other than maybe on a road trip, it's never spent any time outdoors. It's in the garage when it's not being ridden. I would make sure to mention that the regular maintenance has been done according to the documents that you've shown, either by a Honda dealer or by you or by some other mechanic that you trust and you feel has credibility, but you can mention that. Now, if you own my Honda Goldwing maintenance videos, we're going to talk about a way later that you can leverage that to help you with some negotiating as well. But you might mention, I do my own maintenance. I have Cruiseman's maintenance videos, so the bike has been very well maintained throughout its life. These are big selling points to a potential buyer. On the other hand, if you've taken it to a dealership to have the work done, you can play that up as well. Hey, all the maintenance has been done by a certified Honda service tech over here at XYZ Honda. You want to always paint the most positive picture because you're trying to get the most for this motorcycle. You're not trying to lie or deceive anybody. You just want to sell the best points of your motorcycle. Now, if you have tires that have less than 5,000 miles on them, that's a big selling point. I would tell the buyer, hey, these tires only have 3,000 miles on them, so you're good for at least another 7,000 or 8,000 miles before you have to buy new tires. Let's talk about extended warranties. If you have the Honda Extended Service Plan on your motorcycle, you can transfer that to the new buyer. So it's very easy to do. He actually can do it himself. He basically just needs your VIN and the title, and he can go into any Honda dealer and have that warranty transferred into his or her name. So it's a big selling point, though. If you have the Honda extended warranty, let's say your bike's 4 years old and it's outside of the factory warranty, having an extended warranty for that new buyer, that buyer that's looking at your bike, that's a huge, huge deal, because if your bike's 4 years old and it's outside the factory warranty and you don't have an extended warranty, it's possible they won't be able to get an extended warranty. Now, they might be able to get a third-party warranty after the bike's been inspected, but it's not a selling point for you. I would also mention, if your bike is less than 3 years old, make sure you mention that the bike is still under the Honda factory warranty, and that as long as it is under the factory warranty, that new buyer will have the ability to purchase an extended warranty should they so desire. Okay, so you've agreed on a price. You're both happy with the deal. How do you actually do the transaction? I like to go to a local bank. That's why I like to do all these during the week when the banks are open. I go to a bank that I know has a notary on duty. I've checked this before the person ever came over to look at the bike. I've contacted my bank. Do you have a notary there? Yes. I might need to come by and transact a deal for a sale of a motorcycle, and they'll know. They've done this before. I go to the bank. If the person's paying you in cash, you can give the cash to your banker, and they can run it through that little machine that checks it to make sure they're all real $100 bills or 20s or whatever they give you. And then they can count it to make sure that's all good and clean. They can also witness that you've signed your title over to the new buyer. They could notarize the bill of sale and any documents that you might have. Your states may have different documents that are required for the sale of a motorcycle, but whatever documents are required, you simply take them with you to the bank and have this done there. You do want to make sure that you get your buyer's email address. Make sure you have that email address, and of course their phone number and address information. And when you sign over the title, make sure you call your insurance company immediately before that person rides off on the bike. Make sure you've contacted your insurance company to let them know that you've sold the motorcycle and there is a new buyer, so that you're not held liable on your insurance for anything that happens after that point. Now, there's one other thing that goes into this negotiating and transaction process that I have not mentioned up until now because I wanted to wait till the end. It depends on what you plan to do, assuming that this is a Honda Goldwing. Now, if you're not selling a Honda Goldwing, what I'm about to say has no impact on you for the rest of this section. If you own my Honda Goldwing maintenance video series, you paid perhaps $349 for those videos. If you plan to buy a new Honda Goldwing, 6th generation or whatever generation you have the videos for, if you plan to buy a new Goldwing that those videos are also applicable to, those videos are fine. You can keep them, use them on your next Honda Goldwing, no problem. But let's say you are moving away from a Honda Goldwing. Let's say you're going to buy a Harley or you're going to buy a BMW. You're not buying a new Honda Goldwing, or maybe you're just getting away from motorcycling altogether. Little known fact, you can give your new buyer a 50% discount to have those videos, your videos, transferred to the new owner. Now that's a selling point. Depending on, what the new buyer, if he wants to do his own maintenance, they can save 50% off the price of the videos to have them transferred into their name. So instead of them having to purchase the videos for $349, that's the current price at the time this video is being made. That can change, but they can purchase those videos for roughly $175. So that is a $175 perk that you're able to offer your potential buyer if you're getting away from the Goldwing. Now, if you're going to buy another Goldwing, you'll want to keep the videos, because what has to happen is we have to cancel your video account, and we'll basically send the buyer a link, a special link, where they can purchase a new set of videos with a 50% discount. It's the only way to get that kind of a discount on these videos. But we do give you, as the owner of our maintenance videos, the ability to transfer the ownership of those videos by basically giving your new buyer. Now, the way that works is you have to send me an email to info@cruisemansgarage.com, and you have to indicate that you're selling your Goldwing and that there is a new buyer, and I need that new buyer's email address. That's why I asked you to get their email address. And I will then cancel your video account. I will then send an email to that new buyer offering them the opportunity to purchase the maintenance videos at the 50% discount. And it's simple as that. You no longer own the videos, and if they make the purchase, they now have the videos for their new Goldwing. If you have any questions or comments about the information in this video, please put it in the comments section down below. I will make sure to read every comment and I will respond accordingly. I hope you found the information in this video valuable, and I hope you get the most for your used Honda Goldwing. And if you liked this video, you can do me a big favor. Please give it a thumbs up. That really does help my YouTube rankings. Hey, until the next Cruiseman's Garage video, remember what I always say: ride often, but ride safe.